Rain falling steadily on glass windows. The sound is constant, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. In the distance, the hum of neon signs. Further still, the occasional wail of sirens. The sounds blend together into the white noise of a sleeping city that never truly sleeps. Lauren didn't trust mirrors anymore. Not the ones in his penthouse suite on the 147th floor, where the rain traced endless wandering patterns down the floor-to-ceiling windows. Not the ones in the neural interface clinics where he'd upgraded his consciousness 3 times this year, each time staring at his reflection as technicians in sterile white coats inserted microscopic filaments of gold and silicon into the gray matter of his brain. And especially not the one he was staring into now, in the dimly lit privacy of his executive bathroom, watching his reflection glitch for just a fraction of a second. The glitch was always the same. A face that wasn't quite his own would bleed through, older perhaps, more weathered, eyes that had seen things his own hadn't. Then his familiar features would reassert themselves, like reality correcting a clerical error. He blinked slowly, deliberately, counted to 3, opened his eyes. The moment had passed. His own face stared back at him, 34 years old, sharp-featured, with the kind of carefully maintained appearance that came from having a personal medical team on call 24 hours a day. Probably just the new ocular implants adjusting to the low light, he told himself. The technician had warned him about minor visual artifacts during the integration period. Neural lag, they called it, the brain's way of adjusting to seeing more than human eyes were meant to see. But Lauren had seen these glitches before, long before the latest upgrades. Sometimes, late at night when the city's data streams were quietest and the quantum processors took their scheduled maintenance cycles, he would catch movement in his peripheral vision, shadows that didn't match any light source, faces in crowds that vanished the instant he looked directly at them, patterns in the rain that seemed almost intentional. The augmented reality filters most citizens wore would have hidden such things, smoothing the world into marketable perfection. Every surface could be overlaid with advertisements. Every person could be tagged with their social credit score and purchasing history. The city itself became a customizable experience, reality edited in real time to match individual preferences and commercial interests. But Lauren had disabled most of his filters years ago. He wanted to see the cracks, the glitches, the places where the programming showed through. Water running from a faucet. The sound is clear, pure. Then it stops. Silence except for the rain. He turned on the tap and watched the water flow. Even that seemed choreographed somehow, the precise arc of the stream, the way it swirled down the drain in a perfect spiral. Everything in Casavida followed patterns, predicted patterns, optimal patterns designed by algorithms that had been analyzing human behavior for decades, refining their models with each passing second. He washed his hands slowly, methodically. Soap, water, the ritual of cleanliness. Such a simple human thing. Yet even this felt observed, monitored, cataloged somewhere in vast databases that tracked every action of every citizen, building behavioral models so accurate they could predict what you would do tomorrow with 97% accuracy. Unless you were Lauren Conti. Then the accuracy dropped to 73%. He'd hacked into the city's predictive analytics last year and checked his own profile. 73%, an aberration, a statistical anomaly that should have drawn investigation, but somehow never did. He dried his hands on a towel that cost more than most citizens earned in a week. Egyptian cotton, harvested by robots in vertical farms, processed in automated facilities, delivered by drone.
supply chains so efficient they'd eliminated human involvement entirely, leaving unemployment at 62% and corporate profits at all-time highs. His assistant's voice cut through his augmented audio feed, transmitted directly to the neural implant behind his left ear. "Mr. Voss, the board is convening in 15 minutes. They want your response to Meridian's latest acquisition." Meridian Corp. The name alone made his jaw tighten, and that meant dealing with him, Silas Crane.
Footsteps on marble, slow, measured, each step echoing in the silence. Lauren walked back into his office, moving without hurry. Time was a resource he could afford to waste. The board would wait. They always waited. Because, despite their seniority and their ownership stakes and their connections to investment networks that spanned 3 continents, Lauren Conti was the one who made Voss Industries profitable. He was the visionary, the genius, the public face of human augmentation. Or so the story went. His office was a masterpiece of carefully curated minimalism, glass and steel, and clean lines that suggested both wealth and restraint. The desk was real mahogany, a statement of organic luxury in a world where most furniture was synthesized from recycled polymers. The chair adapted to his posture in real time, thousands of microscopic sensors reading his muscle tension and bone alignment, adjusting support with pneumatic precision. The windows showed Casavida stretching out below, a landscape of gleaming towers and holographic advertisements that shifted based on the biometric data of passing pedestrians. The rain created streaks of distortion across the view, adding an element of chaos to the city's otherwise perfect geometries. It was beautiful in its own terrible way, efficient, optimized, soulless. Lauren had lived in Casavida his entire life, 34 years. He'd watched it grow from a cluster of experimental smart buildings into a sprawling metropolis of 15 million souls, each one monitored, analyzed, and optimized for maximum economic productivity. The city had been designed as a proof of concept. Could artificial intelligence and human augmentation coexist in a single urban environment? Could they complement each other, or would they inevitably compete for dominance? For 12 years, Lauren had been locked in that competition with Silas Crane. 12 years of quarterly earnings reports that read like battlefield dispatches. 12 years of innovation races and hostile acquisitions and public debates about the future of humanity itself. Crane Enterprises pushed artificial intelligence to godlike levels of autonomy. Their latest models could predict market fluctuations 6 months in advance with 89% accuracy, could diagnose diseases before symptoms manifested, scanning biodata for patterns invisible to human doctors, could optimize city traffic flows to reduce commute times by 47% while simultaneously increasing retail exposure by 62% through clever routing past storefronts. Pure intelligence, unshackled from the limitations of meat and blood and bone. Voss Industries championed the opposite path, human augmentation, the perfection of flesh through technology. Neural processors that let workers think at computer speeds, analyzing complex problems in seconds rather than hours. Muscle fiber enhancements that turned construction workers into one-person crews, lifting loads that would have required teams of unmodified humans. Sensory upgrades that let artists see in ultraviolet and infrared, capturing spectrums of light invisible to unaugmented eyes. The belief that humanity's future wasn't in abandoning the body, but in perfecting it, transcending biological limits while maintaining the essence of human experience. 2 philosophies, 2 empires, 1 city caught between them, serving as the battlefield and the prize. And lately, Lauren had begun to suspect none of it was real. A soft chime, barely audible, like a distant bell. "Postpone the board meeting,"
Lauren said quietly, speaking to the air. The office AI would hear him, process his command, execute his will with perfect efficiency. "Sir, they were quite insistent," his assistant's voice, tinged with concern. "Miss Chen, efficient, loyal, recruited from the top business school in Asia 5 years ago, another piece of his carefully assembled corporate infrastructure. An hour, Miss Chen. I don't care how insistent they are. Tell them I'm reviewing critical intelligence on the Crane situation and will be ready to present a comprehensive counter-strategy at the revised time." There was a pause. His assistant knew better than to argue when he used that tone. "Of course, Mr. Voss, I'll handle it. Shall I prepare briefing materials on Meridian's acquisition?" "No, I'll handle this personally." "Understood, sir."
Neural interface activation chime, a rising tone that suggests something powering up. "Route all calls to voicemail," Lauren continued. "Lock the office doors. Privacy mode, full spectrum." The windows immediately darkened, smart glass shifting to opacity. The city view vanished, replaced by opaque barriers that shut out the world. The air itself seemed to still as white noise generators activated, flooding the electromagnetic spectrum with random signals that would mask any sound from leaving the room. Electronic countermeasures swept the space for surveillance devices, finding and neutralizing the 7 that Lauren had installed himself as decoys, and the 3 he only suspected existed, hidden by the board or corporate security or perhaps entities even higher up the chain of command that he'd never met and perhaps never would. Even then, he wasn't sure he was truly alone. In a building where the walls themselves had sensors, where every surface could potentially be a screen, or a microphone, or a camera lens no larger than a dust mote, true privacy was a comforting fiction, an impossibility made temporarily plausible through sufficient application of technology and paranoia. But he went through the motions anyway, because even comforting fictions had their uses, and because if anyone was watching, he wanted them to think he believed himself secure. Let them underestimate his awareness of their presence. He moved to the abstract sculpture in the corner, a twisted mass of chrome and glass created by a Japanese artist whose work sold for millions at auction. The sculpture was called Entropy's Dream, and it depicted chaos frozen in metal. Lauren had never particularly liked it, but it served a purpose beyond aesthetics. His fingers found the pressure points in a specific sequence: top left, lower right, center mass, upper right, a code known only to him, programmed into microswitches hidden within the sculpture's internal structure. A section of the wall behind it slid open with a whisper of hydraulics. The hidden compartment revealed itself, bathed in soft blue light from chemical glow strips that wouldn't register on electronic sensors.
Inside was equipment that officially didn't exist. A VR rig built from components purchased through a dozen shell companies across 8 countries. Neural interface gear that had never been registered with the global AI monitoring network. Quantum encrypted communication protocols running on servers physically isolated from any network his company controlled. This was Lauren's real work. Everything else, the board meetings, the product launches, the carefully orchestrated rivalry with Silas Crane, was theater. Necessary theater that maintained his position and his power, but theater nonetheless. This was where he went searching for truth, for answers to questions he couldn't even properly formulate yet. Soft electrical hum as equipment powers up, a low, steady drone. He lifted the VR helmet from its charging cradle. The device was heavier than commercial models, packed with additional processing power and sensor arrays. The interior was a nest of precisely positioned contacts that would read his brain activity with terrifying accuracy, translating thought into action in the digital realm with minimal lag. The haptic gloves came next. He pulled them on slowly, feeling the familiar tingle as thousands of microscopic sensors bonded with his skin. They would track every movement of his fingers, every flex of his muscles, allowing him to manipulate virtual objects as easily as physical ones. He settled into the chair, not the adaptive corporate throne, but a simple, stable platform that wouldn't shift or adjust while his consciousness was elsewhere. A fixed point in physical reality while his mind traveled to stranger places. A deep breath, 4 seconds in, hold for 4, 4 seconds out. A moment of centering, of preparation, the last ritual before crossing the threshold. Then the activation command sent through thought alone, a mental password that his implants recognized and executed. The world dissolved.
The office sounds fade away slowly, as if someone is turning down a volume knob. They're replaced by something stranger, digital wind that doesn't quite sound like wind. Distant sounds like whale song, but processed through ancient modems and copper wires. Crystalline chimes that seem to exist in more dimensions than 3, creating harmonics that shouldn't be possible. For a moment, though moment wasn't quite the right word in a space where time worked differently, Lauren floated in white light, pure, empty, waiting. This was the void between realities, the nowhere space where consciousness traveled when jumping from physical neurons to digital pathways, the gap between meat and mathematics. Some people found it terrifying, the dissolution of bodily sensation, the absence of any sensory input except the pure awareness of existence. Lauren had read reports of users who panicked in this space, their minds rejecting the transition and snapping them back to physical reality, with symptoms ranging from nausea to temporary paralysis. But Lauren had long since learned to find it peaceful, a rare moment of true isolation, free from the constant stream of data that filled every waking second of modern life. Just consciousness, pure and undefined, before the simulation began. Then the light began to organize itself. Random photons became patterns. Patterns became geometry. Geometry became structure. The sanctuary assembled around him like a memory slowly coming into focus, each element clicking into place with dream logic that felt inevitable in retrospect. Crystalline structures forming, musical tones as data solidifies into architecture. It was a place that shouldn't exist. Not in any technical sense, the servers were real enough, hidden in some undocumented corner of the global network. Orphaned processing capacity in decommissioned facilities, or perhaps computational spare cycles stolen from enterprise systems during low usage periods. The infrastructure existed somewhere, but it existed in violation of every principle of corporate VR design. There were no advertisements here, no user analytics tracking gaze direction and interaction patterns, no monetization strategies or engagement metrics or algorithmic recommendations, no data harvesting or behavioral profiling or targeted marketing. Just space, just silence, just the rare and precious possibility of genuine connection. The sanctuary manifested as an impossible landscape, floating platforms of crystalline data suspended over an infinite drop that terminated in what looked like distant stars but was actually the network's background traffic visualized as light. Each packet of information became a pinpoint of illumination, creating constellations that shifted and flowed with the rhythms of global communication. The platforms themselves were connected by bridges that formed and dissolved based on the presence of visitors, creating unique architectures for each gathering. Sometimes the sanctuary was a single island, sometimes it was an archipelago, sometimes it was a vast network of interconnected spaces that sprawled across virtual kilometers.
Tonight, it was simple. 2 platforms, 1 bridge between them. Lauren had stumbled into the sanctuary 3 years ago during a routine security audit. He'd been tracing unusual data flows through his company's network, activity that shouldn't have been there, communications that his own security systems couldn't decode. Encrypted traffic that seemed to route through Voss Industries servers, but neither originated nor terminated within company infrastructure. The trail had led him here, to this ghost in the machine he couldn't quite delete. He'd tried at first, sent intrusion countermeasures, attempted to trace the source, even considered reporting it to corporate security. But something had stopped him. Curiosity, perhaps, or loneliness, or the growing suspicion that the official channels couldn't be trusted. Instead of destroying it, he'd left it alone, monitored it quietly, and eventually, cautiously, he'd visit it. That first visit had been brief, just a few minutes of exploration, expecting security AI or hostile code or some obvious trap. Instead, he'd found only empty platforms and beautiful impossibility, a space carved from silence in a world of noise. He'd return the next night, and the night after that, each time staying a little longer, each time venturing a little further into the network of platforms and bridges. On the seventh visit, he'd found Cypher waiting.
Footsteps approaching. Not boots on stone, but something crystalline. Data moving across data. "You're late," a voice said behind him. Loren turned slowly, taking his time. In here, time moved differently anyway, stretched or compressed based on processor loads and connection speeds and the vagaries of network traffic, creating a strange flexibility to moments that physical reality never allowed. A second could feel like an hour could pass like a heartbeat. Cypher's avatar was deliberately generic, humanoid in basic shape but featureless otherwise. A body made of wire frame and light, translucent enough to see the data streams flowing within their form like bioluminescent blood. No face, no gender markers. Voice modulated to perfect androgyny, neither male nor female, neither young nor old. Anonymous by design, private in a world where privacy had become the ultimate luxury. But there was warmth in the way they moved, familiarity earned over hundreds of conversations that had become the most honest interactions of Loren's life. In physical reality, he was surrounded by people, assistants and board members and employees and competitors, but none of them were real. None of them saw him as anything other than a role, a function, a piece of the corporate machinery. Only Cypher seemed to see something else, something more. "Board meeting drama," Loren said, settling onto one of the floating platforms. The surface responded to his presence, growing slightly more solid. Still translucent, still clearly data rather than matter, but accommodating to his virtual weight. Crane's making moves again. They always want immediate responses to his immediate responses to our immediate responses. It's exhausting. "The nature of competition," Cypher said, their form shifting to a seated position nearby. Not too close. They maintain distance, even here. Boundaries carefully observed, despite the intimacy of their conversations. "Let me guess. Another AI breakthrough that's going to make human consciousness obsolete?"
Close. He's unveiling something called Project Synthesis, full digital consciousness transfer. Upload your mind to the network, discard the meat, live forever as pure information. Loren watched the data streams flow beneath the platform like luminous rivers. The promotional materials make it sound like transcendence. But you don't think it is. It wasn't a question. Cypher knew him well enough to read the skepticism in his tone. "I think he believes it is," Loren said carefully. "But I've been analyzing the data streams coming out of his research division, watching the patterns of information flow, and there's something off about it." "Off how?" "Like someone's feeding him the results he expects to see. The data's too clean, too consistent. Real research has noise, unexpected variables, failed experiments. But Crane's Project Synthesis has been progressing in a perfect straight line for 18 months. Every milestone hit exactly on schedule, every technical challenge overcome within the projected timeframe." Cypher was quiet for a long moment. In the silence, Loren could hear the background hum of the network, millions of connections maintaining themselves, routers passing packets, servers processing requests. The sound of global consciousness made audible. When Cypher spoke again, their voice carried an edge that Loren had learned to recognize as fear. "You think it's being manipulated." "I think he's being manipulated, along with everyone else, including me." Loren paused, considering how much to reveal, but this was the sanctuary, the one place where honesty felt possible. "I found something, in my own company records, buried deep in the archived employee files from before I took over as CEO. How deep? 28 years deep, the year I was born." Cypher leaned forward slightly. "What did you find?" Loren manifested a holographic display between them. The sanctuary allowed such things, direct visualization of data,
information made visible and tangible in ways that physical reality couldn't match. The display showed what looked like a family tree, but the branches were labeled with corporate structures and financial flows rather than names. A project designation, Twin Protocol, funded by a corporation I'd never heard of until 6 months ago, Omni Dynamics. They don't exist anymore, at least not publicly. Dissolved 23 years ago according to corporate registration databases, but the funding streams, they're still active, still flowing, routing through dozens of intermediary shells and offshore accounts, but traceable if you know what to look for. Flowing where? Voss Industries, Crane Enterprises, and about 40 other corporations throughout Casavida, all of them receiving quarterly transfers that don't appear on any official balance sheets. Dark money, billions of dollars annually, distributed according to some algorithm I can't decode. Cypher studied the display in silence. Lauren watched their featureless avatar, trying to read body language from a form that had no face or features, but he'd learned their mannerisms over years of conversation. The way they tilted their head meant concentration. The slight shift in their shoulders suggested anxiety. "Someone's been bankrolling your rivalry from the beginning," Cypher said finally. "Not just bankrolling it, orchestrating it. I've traced some of the funding flows back to specific initiatives, research grants that led to breakthroughs, acquisitions that seemed like good business decisions, but were actually steering us toward predetermined outcomes. Even some of my own hiring decisions, key personnel who joined the company at crucial moments and pushed us in specific directions. You think your own employees are compromised?"
I think everyone's compromised. The question is how deep it goes and what the purpose is. Lauren expanded the holographic display, adding new layers of data. Financial records, personnel files, research project timelines. They all connected in a web so complex it looked almost random until you knew what pattern to search for. Then it became terrifyingly clear. "Look at this," he said, highlighting a series of events. 7 years ago, Crane Enterprises announced a major breakthrough in neural network architecture. It revolutionized their AI development. 2 months later, I acquired a biotech startup that specialized in organic neural interfaces. Different technologies, different philosophies, but both announcements came from companies that had recently received funding from Omni Dynamics subsidiaries. Coincidence? Not when it's happened 37 times in the last 12 years. Every major innovation in either company has been preceded by strategic funding from the Omni network. They're not just watching our rivalry, they're choreographing it, making us dance to music we can't hear. Cypher stood and walked to the edge of the platform, looking down at the streams of light flowing beneath them. Why? That's what I'm trying to figure out. At first, I thought it might be about profit. Back both sides of a competition and profit regardless of who wins. But the amounts don't make sense for that. Billions in funding for returns that, while substantial, don't justify the investment. There has to be another purpose. Control? Control of what? 2 corporations? They could have just bought us outright with the money they spent on manipulation. No, it's something else. Something bigger.
Lauren joined Cypher at the platform's edge. Together they looked down at the infinite drop, at the constellation of data flowing beneath them. Each point of light represented human activity, communications, transactions, the thoughts and dreams of 15 million people reduced to packets of information. The city, Cypher said quietly. Casavida itself. That's my theory. The whole thing is an experiment. Voss Industries versus Crane Enterprises isn't just corporate rivalry, it's a test. Human augmentation versus artificial intelligence, flesh versus silicon. 2 philosophies of human evolution fighting for dominance in a controlled environment. And we're the subjects? All of us, every citizen of Casavida, but especially, Lauren trailed off, hesitating. Especially us, Cypher finished. You and Crane, the figureheads, the champions of each philosophy. Lauren nodded slowly. I think we're the apex subjects, the most important data points in whatever they're measuring, which means everything I do, every decision I make, every innovation I pursue, it's all being watched, analyzed, fed into some model that's trying to determine which path humanity should take. That's, Cypher seemed to struggle for words, that's horrifying. That's corporate science. Ethics committees disbanded in favor of shareholder value. Informed consent replaced by terms of service agreements no one reads. Welcome to the future. They stood in silence for a long time. The data streams flowed beneath them, indifferent to revelation. The network continued its work, processing the thoughts and actions of millions,
reducing human experience to analyzable data. Finally, Cypher spoke. What are you going to do?
What can I do? If I'm right, if this goes as deep as I think it does, then everyone around me could be complicit. My board, my executives, even my security team. The moment I start making accusations, they'll either think I'm paranoid or they'll move to contain me. You could go public. With what evidence? Financial records I obtained through illegal network intrusion? Circumstantial patterns that could be explained as coincidence? I'd be discredited in hours, probably committed for psychological evaluation, diagnosed with stress-induced paranoia, and quietly disappeared into some luxury treatment facility. Then what? Lauren was quiet for a moment, thinking. I need more information, more concrete evidence, and I need to understand what they want, what the end goal is, because if I'm going to fight this, I need to know what I'm fighting.
You're assuming you can fight it at all.
Maybe I can't, but I have to try. Because if I'm right, if this is all manipulation, then nothing I've built is real. My company, my innovations, my entire life's work, it's all been scripted, predetermined, and I refuse to accept that. Cypher turned to look at him, their featureless avatars somehow conveying sadness. I understand, better than you know. Have you found similar patterns in your own life?
What can I do? If I'm right, if this goes as deep as I think it does, then everyone around me could be complicit. My board, my executives, even my security team. The moment I start making accusations, they'll either think I'm paranoid or they'll move to contain me. You could go public. With what evidence? Financial records I obtained through illegal network intrusion? Circumstantial patterns that could be explained as coincidence? I'd be discredited in hours, probably committed for psychological evaluation, diagnosed with stress-induced paranoia, and quietly disappeared into some luxury treatment facility. Then what? Lauren was quiet for a moment, thinking. I need more information, more concrete evidence, and I need to understand what they want, what the end goal is, because if I'm going to fight this, I need to know what I'm fighting. You're assuming you can fight it at all. Maybe I can't, but I have to try. Because if I'm right, if this is all manipulation, then nothing I've built is real. My company, my innovations, my entire life's work, it's all been scripted, predetermined, and I refuse to accept that. Cypher turned to look at him, their featureless avatar somehow conveying sadness. I understand, better than you know. Have you found similar patterns in your own life? Different details, Cypher said carefully, but the same general shape. The feeling of invisible hands guiding events, coincidences that strain probability, a sense that my choices aren't entirely my own. Who are you? Lauren asked. It was a question he'd asked before, many times, always received the same answer. Someone like you, searching for truth in a city built on lies. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give. For now. Lauren wanted to press further, but he'd learned that Cypher had boundaries, lines they wouldn't cross, even here in their sanctuary. He respected that, even as it frustrated him, because mystery or not, Cypher was the only person or entity he trusted, the only relationship that felt genuine in a world of performance and deception.
A distant chime, softer than before, almost melancholy. I should go, Lauren said reluctantly. The board meeting has been rescheduled, and I've already pushed them as far as I can. If I'm going to maintain my position, I need to play the role they expect. The brilliant CEO, the champion of human potential. The puppet who doesn't know he's a puppet, but a puppet who's starting to see the strings. Cypher nodded. Be careful, Lauren. People who look too closely at the architecture of the cage tend to disappear, and whatever omnidynamics is, whatever they want, they've invested too much in this experiment to let you disrupt it. I know, but I'm going to find answers, even if it means burning everything down. That's what I'm afraid of. Lauren smiled, though Cypher couldn't see it through his own featureless avatar. Don't worry about me. I'm very good at survival. So is everyone, right up until they're not. Comforting. Honest. I'll take it. Lauren moved toward the platform's edge, preparing to disconnect. Same time tomorrow? I'll be here. Thank you, Cypher, for listening, for understanding, for being real when everything else feels like illusion. The pleasure is mutual. Lauren closed his eyes,
A symbolic gesture in virtual space, but one that helped trigger the disconnect protocols. The sanctuary began to dissolve around him, crystal platforms fragmenting into streams of data that flowed back into the network's chaos. The last thing he heard was Cypher's voice, distant and fading. "Find the truth, Lauren, but be prepared for it to be worse than you imagine."
VR disconnection, a falling sensation translated to audio. Then silence. The sound returns gradually. Rain still falling, cities still humming, but we're in a different space now, different acoustics, a different quality of silence. Across the city, in a tower that mirrored Voss Industries in all but ideology, Silas Crane removed his VR headset and sat in darkness. His hands were shaking. He noticed this with the same detached analytical precision he brought to all observations. Tremor amplitude approximately 3 millimeters, frequency irregular, suggesting emotional rather than neurological origin. Cortisol levels elevated. He could feel it in his body, even without the diagnostic readouts available through his neural interfaces. Adrenaline, anxiety, fear. 3 years. 3 years of visiting the sanctuary. 3 years of confiding in Cypher, of building trust in the only relationship that felt genuine in a world of performance and calculation. And now Cypher, Lauren Conti, was getting too close to the truth. Because Silas had found the same thing, the twin protocol, omnidynamics, the evidence of manipulation stretching back to the moment of his birth. But he'd found something else, too, something that Lauren hadn't mentioned, something that changed everything.
Breathing. Slow and controlled, but with an edge of panic underneath. Silas stood slowly from his chair, not adaptive like Lauren's, but fixed and minimal, a statement of efficiency over comfort. His office was the aesthetic opposite of his rivals. Where Voss Industries embraced organic materials and human-centered design, Crane Enterprises was all white surfaces and precise angles, clean lines, mathematical proportions, beauty derived from function rather than form. A statement of philosophy made architectural. He walked to the window and looked out at Casavida. The same city Lauren was looking at from his own tower, just from a different angle. The rain created the same patterns on the glass. The neon lights cast the same colors into the night. But Silas saw it differently. Where Lauren saw a cage, Silas saw a system. Where Lauren saw manipulation, Silas saw optimization. Or at least, that's what he used to see, before he found the files. Holographic display activating. A soft hum of technology. He activated the hidden terminal. Like Lauren, he had equipment that officially didn't exist. Like Lauren, he'd learned paranoia was just another word for awareness. The holographic display materialized in the air before him, showing the encrypted file he'd been working on for 6 months. It had taken him that long to decrypt it. 6 months of running quantum algorithms on servers he'd quietly diverted from company use. 6 months of work done in stolen moments between board meetings and product launches and the endless performance of corporate rivalry. The file name was simple: subjects A and B, final.enc. Inside it, a truth that rewrote his entire existence. Medical records, genetic profiles, genomic analysis more detailed than anything commercially available. 2 infants born on the same day in Casavida General Hospital, same maternity ward, same attending physician, delivered within hours of each other. But not to random families, not to mothers who had carried them for 9 months, who had felt them growing, who had chosen their names with hope and love and dreams for the future. No, these infants had been separated immediately, placed with different families who had been carefully selected, carefully vetted, carefully prepared for their roles as unwitting participants in a grand experiment.
Subject A, Silas Crane. Genetic modifications. Enhanced pattern recognition capabilities. Accelerated synaptic formation in regions associated with logical reasoning. Neural architecture optimized for mathematical and spatial processing. Recommended developmental trajectory, abstract thinking, systems analysis, artificial intelligence development. Placement, family unit with strong technical backgrounds. Father, engineer, mother, mathematician, both with high IQ scores and history of academic achievement. Subject B, Lauren Conti. Genetic modifications, enhanced sensory processing, increased proprioception and kinesthetic awareness, neural architecture optimized for spatial reasoning and biological integration, recommended developmental trajectory, physical sciences, biological research, human augmentation development. Brothers. They were brothers. Not just metaphorically, not just as rival CEOs in competing industries, actual biological brothers. Twins, separated at birth like some ancient myth or fairy tale. Except this wasn't mythology. This was corporate science. This was calculated. This was engineered. And everything had been designed to make them enemies. Footsteps, pacing back and forth across the office. Silas walked away from the window, unable to look at the city anymore. It felt like accusation. Everywhere he looked, he saw lies layered upon lies. The buildings weren't just structures, they were observation posts. The citizens weren't just people, they were data points. The entire city was a laboratory, and he was one of the rats running through the maze. Except rats didn't know they were rats, didn't understand the nature of their confinement. And Silas, unfortunately, did. He'd known something was wrong for years, since he was 20, when he'd taken over Crane Enterprises from the retiring CEO who had somehow, improbably, mentored him since childhood. The transition had been too smooth, too inevitable, as if his entire life had been a preparation for that exact moment. By 23, he'd suspected manipulation. By 27, he'd started investigating. By 30, he'd confirmed that his rivalry with Lauren Conti wasn't accidental or organic, but orchestrated from some hidden height. But he'd never suspected this, never imagined the manipulation went so deep, that they'd been engineered before birth, shaped in vitro, designed for opposition. Two philosophies, both manufactured, both leading to the same inevitable conclusion. Incoming priority call, an insistent chime. Mr. Crane, his AI assistant said, a voice that was perfectly modulated, perfectly professional, perfectly inhuman. You have an urgent communication from the board. They're requesting immediate approval for the synthesis rollout. Project Synthesis, his masterwork, or what he'd thought was his masterwork. The culmination of 12 years of research into digital consciousness, the technology that would free humanity from biological limits, upload minds to the network, create immortality through information. Except now he knew it wasn't his, it was theirs, omnidynamics, or whatever they'd become. Every breakthrough had been guided, every technical challenge overcome through strategic funding and carefully placed research grants and brilliant scientists who had joined his company at exactly the right moments with exactly the right expertise. He'd thought he was a genius. Turned out he was just good at following a script he couldn't see. "Tell them I need more time," Silas said quietly. "Sir, they've indicated this is time-sensitive. The market window. I don't care about the market window." The words came out sharper than he intended, anger breaking through the carefully maintained control. "Tell them I need 48 hours to review final safety protocols. No more." There was a pause. Even the AI seemed surprised by his vehemence. "Of course, Mr. Crane. I'll relay your response."
The call disconnects. Silence returns. 48 hours. What could he do in 48 hours? What could anyone do against an organization that had been manipulating their entire lives, that had the resources to shape genetics, to place families, to orchestrate corporate rivalries spanning decades? But he had to do something, had to try. Because if he didn't, if he just accepted his role and played his part, then everything he'd ever believed about free will and autonomy and the sanctity of consciousness would be a lie. And Silas Crane, Subject A, the product of engineered genetics and controlled development, refused to believe he was just the sum of his programming. He had to tell Lauren, had to warn him, had to make his brother, understand what they were facing. But how? They'd spent 12 years cultivating their rivalry. Every public interaction was documented, analyzed, weaponized by shareholders and media algorithms and market analysts who tracked their competition like spectators at a gladiatorial match. If he suddenly reached out, alarms would sound across both corporations. Security protocols would activate. Their invisible masters would know their secret was compromised. But there was one place their masters couldn't see, one space that existed in the cracks of their control: the sanctuary.
Chair moving. Equipment activating. Silas moved quickly now, decision made. He had his own hidden VR rig, built in secret for the same reasons Lauren had built his. The same paranoia. The same need for privacy in a world that had eliminated the concept. He pulled on the haptic gloves, feeling the sensors bond to his skin, lifted the neural interface helmet, hesitated for just a moment. This was dangerous. If he revealed himself to Lauren, revealed that he was Cypher, the dynamic between them would change irrevocably. The one honest relationship in his life would transform into something else, something complicated by rivalry and blood and shared victimization. But there was no other way. Lauren needed to know. They both needed to know. And then, somehow, they needed to decide what to do about it, together. For the first time in their carefully orchestrated lives. Silas lowered the helmet into place, activated the systems, and dove into the network. The office fades. The digital wind returns. The impossible crystalline structures. The sanctuary reformed around him. Crystal platforms, infinite drop, stars that weren't stars but data made luminous. And standing on the platform where they'd spoken just minutes before in objective time, where Lauren had logged out and Silas had logged back in, was a figure. Lauren's avatar. But he hadn't left. He'd come back.
Two presences occupying the same space, a doubling of the ambient noise. "Cypher?" Lauren said, turning. His avatar was still the generic wireframe, still anonymous, but there was surprise in his posture. "I didn't expect you to return so quickly." Silas, as Cypher, stood motionless. This was the moment, the revelation that would change everything. "I need to tell you something," he said, voice still modulated to androgyny, still masked. "Something you're not going to want to hear." "About the twin protocol?" "About us." Lauren tilted his head. "What about us?" Silas took a slow, deep breath that his virtual avatar didn't need, preparing himself. Then, deliberately, he began to deactivate his anonymization protocols. The voice modulation dropped first. His natural speaking voice emerged, deeper than Cypher's androgynous tone, carrying his distinct accent and speech patterns. Then, the avatar's features began to resolve, wireframe becoming solid, generic becoming specific, a face forming from light and data. A face Lauren had seen 1,000 times on competitor analysis reports and news feeds and across boardroom tables. Digital world fragmenting, a moment of shocked silence. "How long have you known?" The words came out rougher than Silas intended, carrying the weight of 3 years of deception and the fear of rejection. Lauren's avatar stood perfectly still, frozen, processing. "About 15 seconds before you logged in," Lauren said. His voice was carefully controlled, but Silas could hear the emotion underneath. Shock, confusion, the beginning of anger or perhaps hurt. "I planted a trace algorithm during our last conversation. When you accessed the sanctuary from a Crane Enterprises signature, the pieces fell into place. But I didn't want to believe it, hoped I was wrong." "You weren't wrong." "No, I wasn't." Lauren's avatar still hadn't moved. 3 years. 3 years of trusting you, confiding in you. You were the only real thing in my life, Cypher, and you were my enemy the whole time. Not your enemy, never your enemy. Not really.
Then what were you? What are you? Silas let his own avatar shift, taking on his real appearance fully now. Not the corporate mask he wore in physical reality, but something more genuine, raw, vulnerable. "Your brother," he said quietly. "We're brothers, Lauren." The silence that followed felt like falling. "What?" "The twin protocol. I found more files than you did. Medical records, genetic profiles. We were born on the same day, in the same hospital. Twins, separated at birth, placed with different families, engineered to be opposites, raised to be rivals." Lauren's avatar began to pace, virtual footsteps on crystal platforms, the sound somehow conveying agitation. "That's—" He stopped, started again. "That's insane." "That's the truth. I have the files. I can show you." "Show me." Silas manifested the holographic displays he'd been studying for months. Medical records appeared in the air between them, floating like accusations. Genetic sequences spiraling in double helices. Development plans laid out in clinical detail. The entire architecture of their engineered rivalry made visible. Lauren studied them in silence. Silas watched him process the information, seeing the moment comprehension truly hit. The moment denial became acceptance, became horror. Subject A and Subject B. We're experiments, not just in rivalry, in existence itself. Yes. And everyone around us, our families? Carefully selected, our childhoods orchestrated, our education guided. Every significant moment in our lives was a checkpoint in someone else's master plan. Lauren looked up from the displays, meeting Silas's eyes. "This is what you've known? For how long?" 6 months, since I finished decrypting the core files. "And you didn't tell me? In 6 months of conversations, you never thought to mention that we're brothers being manipulated by a shadow corporation?"
The anger in Lauren's voice was sharp, cutting. Silas felt it like physical pain, even in virtual space where pain wasn't supposed to exist. "How could I tell you?" Silas asked. "Every conversation we had was built on anonymity, on trust that didn't depend on knowing who the other was. If I'd revealed myself, revealed us, everything would have changed." "Everything has changed. Everything is changed. You lied to me for 3 years." "I protected our sanctuary, our one space where honesty was possible. If you'd known who I was, would you have trusted me? Would you have confided in me? Or would you have seen me as your rival first, as Silas Crane, the CEO who's trying to destroy everything you've built?" Lauren was silent. The question hung between them, unanswered. Finally, quietly, "I don't know. Neither did I, so I kept the secret, hoping that someday I'd find a way to tell you that wouldn't destroy what we'd built. But then you started finding the same things I'd found, started asking the same questions, and I realized time was running out. Time for what? For the truth, for us to understand what we're facing before it's too late. Too late for what? Silas expanded the holographic display, adding new layers of data, project timelines, development milestones, convergence points. I found references to something called the merger protocol, medical procedures scheduled for next month, neural bridging, consciousness integration. They're planning to combine us, Lauren, to merge our minds into a single entity that incorporates both our philosophies. Lauren stared at the data. That's not possible. The technology doesn't exist. It does now. Project Synthesis, my project, except it was never really mine, it's not just about uploading consciousness, it's about merging multiple consciousnesses into a unified whole. And the augmentation technology you've been developing, the neural interface protocols, they're designed to make biological brains compatible with digital integration. We've been building our own cage.
Yes, separately developing the components they need to complete their experiment. The engineered us to be opposites because they needed both extremes: human augmentation and artificial intelligence, biological integration and digital transcendence. Alone, we're incomplete. Together, we're the prototype for whatever comes next. Lauren walked to the edge of the platform, looking down at the data streams flowing beneath them. What do they want? What's the end goal? I think, Silas joined him at the edge, I think they want to create the perfect leader. Someone who can think like an AI, pure logic, perfect efficiency, but feel like a human. Someone who can unite our competing philosophies and expand their control globally. One corporation to rule them all. One consciousness, ours, combined, optimized, controlled. The data streams flowed beneath them, indifferent to their revelation. Millions of lives reduced to information, all of it processing through systems they'd helped build. The city, Lauren said slowly. Casavida. It's not just our battlefield. It's the whole experiment. Every citizen is being studied, every interaction monitored. They're testing how much control they can exert over a population, how far they can push manipulation before people notice, before people resist. And we're just the apex subjects, the crown jewels of their research. The proof of concept. If they can engineer us, create us from birth, shape our entire lives, make us build exactly what they need while thinking it was our choice, then they can do it to anyone, to everyone. Silence fell between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with the weight of understanding. Everything they'd believed about themselves, about their choices, about their lives, all of it rewritten by this new truth. Finally, Lauren spoke. What are we going to do?
I don't know. I've been trying to figure that out for 6 months. Every option I consider seems to play into their hands. If we run, we lose our positions and they find new subjects. If we fight, we expose ourselves and they shut us down. If we do nothing, they complete their merger and we cease to exist as individuals. There has to be another way. What way? We're dealing with an organization that planned this for 30 years, that has resources we can't imagine, that controls everything from our genetics to our corporate boards. What can we possibly do that they haven't already predicted and prepared for? Lauren turned to face him fully. We can refuse. Refuse what? To merge, to comply, to be their experiment. Even if it means destroying everything, even if it means dying, we can refuse to give them what they want. That's not a plan, that's suicide. Maybe, but it's our choice. Perhaps the first real choice either of us has ever made. Silas studied his brother's avatar, seeing determination in the set of his shoulders, defiance in his posture. The same stubbornness that had made Lauren a formidable rival, now directed at their true enemies. You're serious. Completely. They've controlled everything else about our lives. Our birth, our childhood, our careers, our rivalry. But they can't control what we do with the truth. They can't force us to accept our role in their plan. They can, literally. Neural programming, forced compliance. If the technology exists to merge consciousness, it exists to control it. Then we destroy the technology, sabotage Project Synthesis, sabotage your augmentation research, burn it all down before they can use it. That would destroy both our companies, bankrupt us, leave millions of employees jobless, crash the economy of Casavida. Yes, it would.
The simple acknowledgement hung in the air. No denial, no minimization, just acceptance of the cost.
You'd actually do it, Silas said, somewhere between admiration and horror. You'd burn your entire life's work to spite them? It's not my life's work. It's theirs. They designed it, funded it, guided it. I was just the tool they used, and I refuse to be their tool anymore. Silas was quiet for a long moment, considering. His natural inclination was to find the optimal solution, the path that minimized harm and maximized benefit, the logical choice. But logic was how they'd gotten here. Logic was what the engineers of this experiment expected. Perhaps the only truly illogical, unexpected action was to reject the entire premise. There might be another way, he said slowly, one that doesn't require quite so much destruction. I'm listening. What if we played along, made them think we're complying with the merger protocol, but we don't actually merge? We create a simulation, a fake integration that gives them what they want to see while maintaining our individual consciousness. They'll have medical monitoring, neural scans. They'll know if the merger isn't real. Unless we make it real enough to fool the scans. Use the technology they've given us. Your biological integration expertise, my digital consciousness research. We create a shared interface between our minds that looks like merger but maintains our separation. Lauren considered this. A Trojan horse from the inside. Exactly. Let them think they've won. Let them upload their merged consciousness, us, into whatever system they're building. And then from inside, we find out who they really are, what they really want, and how to stop them. That's incredibly dangerous.
More dangerous than open rebellion? At least this way we gather intelligence, learn their structure, find their weaknesses. Or we actually do merge and lose ourselves in the process, become exactly what they want. It's a risk, but so is everything else. Lauren walked away from the edge, pacing again, thinking. Silas let him process, watching the data streams flow beneath their platform. Each point of light was a life. Each packet of information was someone's thought or action or dream. The network had become the container for human experience, and they were contemplating diving deeper into it, pretending to be absorbed by it while hoping to maintain their individuality. It was the kind of plan that would either be brilliant or catastrophic. No middle ground. Okay, Lauren said finally, but with conditions. What conditions? We don't tell anyone else, not our boards, not our employees, no one. The moment we bring anyone else in, the risk of exposure multiplies. Agreed. What else? We maintain a kill switch, something that can destroy the whole experiment if it goes wrong. If we actually start merging, if we lose ourselves, how would we even know if we're losing ourselves? If our minds are integrating, would we still be able to recognize the loss? We establish protocols, code words, tests of individual identity, regular check-ins to verify we're still separate. Psychological safeguards. The only kind we have. Silas nodded slowly. It was flawed, full of holes, based on technology they didn't fully understand and trust they were barely beginning to rebuild. But it was something, a plan, an action that wasn't just submission or destruction.
There's one more condition, he said quietly. What? We have to actually trust each other. No more secrets, no more masks. If we're going to do this, we do it as brothers, as allies, not as rivals or experiments, or whatever else they tried to make us. Lauren's avatar met his eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. 3 years of honest conversation, all of it built on false pretenses. 3 years of trust and deception intertwined so thoroughly, it was impossible to separate one from the other. And now, the choice to trust again, genuinely, despite everything. Brothers, Lauren said finally, extending a virtual hand. Allies. Silas took the hand. The contact registered in their haptic gloves, creating the sensation of touch through technology. A handshake between enemies becoming brothers, becoming co-conspirators. When does the merger protocol begin? Lauren asked. 3 weeks. They've scheduled preliminary neural mapping next Tuesday. Full integration procedure 2 weeks after that. Then we have 3 weeks to prepare,
to build our fake merger, to gather everything we need, and to figure out what we're going to do when we're on the inside. One problem at a time. Silas smiled despite himself, despite the fear and uncertainty and the magnitude of what they were facing. You sound like me. Is that bad? I'm not sure anymore. I'm not sure about anything. Welcome to the club. They stood together on the crystal platform, looking out at the constellation of data flowing beneath them. Casavida's consciousness made visible. 15 million lives moving through their days, unaware that the foundations of their reality were manufactured, that the city itself was an experiment in control. And somewhere, in hidden spaces neither of them had yet discovered, their creators watched and waited, adjusting variables, optimizing outcomes, preparing for the moment when Subject A and Subject B would fulfill their designed purpose. Except Subject A and Subject B had other plans.
The sanctuary begins to destabilize, a warning tone. Someone's trying to trace us, Lauren said suddenly, attention shifting to something Silas couldn't see. The network security is showing unusual activity. They're scanning for unauthorized VR connections. How long do we have? Minutes, maybe less. We need to disconnect, separately, from different nodes. When do we meet again? Tomorrow, same time, but we should establish a new sanctuary, something more secure, something they can't trace. I'll build it. A private server, quantum encrypted, hidden in the darkest corners of the network. Make sure it's truly dark, no traceable connections to either of our companies. Understood. The warning tones were getting louder, security protocols closing in, time running out. Lauren, Silas said, using his brother's name aloud for the first time. It felt strange in his mouth, forbidden, important. Thank you. For what? For not hating me, for not rejecting me when you found out who I was. Lauren was quiet for a moment. Then, we've both been lied to our entire lives by people who should have protected us, loved us, told us the truth. I won't add to that. Whatever else we are, we're the only real thing each other has. Brothers. Brothers. The sanctuary began to fragment around them, crystal platforms dissolving into code, data streams becoming chaos. The security sweep was getting closer. Go, Lauren said. I'll lead them toward a false endpoint. Meet me tomorrow at 2300. I'll send the coordinates. Stay safe. You too. Then they were moving in opposite directions, consciousness diving through the network, following different pathways back to their physical bodies. The sanctuary collapsed behind them, security protocols finding nothing but empty space and scattered data remnants.
VR disconnection. We're back in physical reality. But something feels different now. The rain sounds more ominous. The city sounds more hostile. Awareness has changed everything. Lauren removed his VR helmet and sat in the darkness of his office, heart racing. The transition back to physical reality always left him slightly disoriented, but this time was worse. This time, everything had changed. Silas Crane was Cypher. His rival was his brother. His entire life was a lie, built on lies, built on manufactured genetics and orchestrated rivalry. And somehow, none of that was the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part was how much sense it made. Breathing, steadying, forcing calm. He stood slowly, muscles stiff from sitting motionless. The office lights were still off, the windows still opaque with privacy mode active. The city beyond was invisible, which felt appropriate. He couldn't trust what he saw anymore anyway. Movement in the corner of his eye made him freeze. Someone was in the office with him. A chair creaking. Someone sitting in darkness. "Excellent performance, Mr. Voss," a woman's voice, cultured, calm, completely at ease, despite having broken into the most secure office in the building. "We've been monitoring your progress with great interest."
Lauren's hand moved toward the panic button under his desk, but stopped when he heard the soft beep of a jammer activating. All his security systems were offline. He was alone with this intruder, cut off from help. "Who are you?" he asked, forcing his voice steady.
You can call me Dr. Reeves, though that's not my real name, any more than Lauren Conti is truly yours. She stood, and the ambient light from his computer screens, the only illumination in the room, revealed her outline. Middle-aged, well-dressed, moving with the confidence of someone who had every right to be there. "How long have you been here?" "Long enough. We've been watching both of you, actually, you and your brother. The twin project has progressed exactly as predicted." Lauren's blood went cold. "You know about Silas?" "Of course we know. We arranged it. The meeting in the sanctuary, the mutual discovery, the revelation of your shared origins, all of it precisely choreographed to occur at this exact moment in your development." "You're lying." "Am I? Think about it, Mr. Voss. You're a brilliant man. Or rather, you were engineered to be brilliant. Does it really seem likely that you would stumble upon the twin protocol by accident? That you would discover the sanctuary, befriend Cypher, and piece together the truth through pure coincidence? We found your files, your funding networks, your manipulation. We wanted you to find them. Breadcrumbs, carefully placed, leading you exactly where we wanted you to go." Dr. Reeves walked to the window and touched the controls. The smart glass became transparent again, revealing Casavida spread out below, the city of 15 million unwitting subjects. "You were getting predictable, both of you, following your engineered pathways too perfectly. We needed to introduce chaos, force you to question, to rebel, to become more than the sum of your programming. Why? Because obedient test subjects don't push boundaries, they don't innovate beyond their parameters, they don't evolve." She turned to face him. "We don't want puppets, Mr. Voss. We want partners, collaborators who understand the scope of what we're building and choose to participate anyway." "Choose? You engineered us from birth."
"Yes, and now you know that. You have information, agency, the ability to make genuine choices. So choose. Join us willingly, or resist and prove you're still slaves to your conditioning."
Lauren stared at her, the calm certainty, the absolute confidence. She wasn't afraid of him at all, wasn't afraid of exposure or resistance or any consequence he might threaten, because she knew something he didn't, had an advantage he couldn't see. "What do you really want?" he asked quietly. "To save humanity, to guide our species through the bottleneck of technological transcendence. We're approaching a pivot point, Mr. Voss. Within 20 years, artificial intelligence will surpass human intelligence in every measurable way. Within 50, human consciousness could be digitized entirely. The question isn't whether these things will happen. The question is, who guides the transition? And you think you should. We know we should, because we've been preparing for this moment for 3 generations, building the infrastructure, testing the technologies, learning how to merge human and artificial intelligence into something new, something better. The merger protocol. Among other things, you and your brother are the prototype, the proof that biological and digital consciousness can coexist in a single entity. But you're not the end goal, you're the beginning. Of what? A new species. Homo synthesium, perhaps, the next step in evolution. Minds that can think with machine efficiency but feel with human depth. Beings that can process data like AI but create like artists. The best of both worlds. She moved closer, her face finally visible in the dim light. She was smiling, not cruel, almost motherly. Don't you see the beauty of it? We're not destroying humanity, we're perfecting it, and you were designed to lead that perfection. Lauren felt his mind racing, processing implications. The city, Casavida, it's not just a test. It's a prototype, a model for how the transition will be managed globally. We've proven we can guide a population of 15 million through social engineering and technological integration. Soon we'll scale to 50 million, then 100 million, eventually the entire species. With us at the head. With you at the head. Once you and Silas complete the merger, you'll have capabilities beyond either philosophy alone. You'll be able to optimize society in ways no single human or AI could achieve. And people will follow you because you'll still be human enough to be relatable, but enhanced enough to be inspirational. It was insane, horrifying, and worst of all, it made a terrible kind of sense. What if we refuse? Lauren asked. Dr. Reeves's smile didn't change. Then we start over with new subjects. We have backup twins already in development. Your refusal would be disappointing, but not catastrophic. We've built redundancy into every system. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your genetic profile, Mr. Voss. Check the fertility clinics operating in Casavida. You'll find dozens of embryos in cryogenic storage, all variants on your basic design. We can grow a new you in 18 years. It's not ideal. We'd prefer to use the 34 years we've already invested in your development, but it's possible. Lauren felt sick. The casual way she discussed replacing him, the absolute confidence that their plan would proceed with or without his cooperation. What about the people in this city? Do they get a choice? They already made their choice every time they accepted a neural implant for better job performance, every time they uploaded their memories to cloud storage for safekeeping, every time they chose convenience over privacy, efficiency over autonomy. They've been slowly merging with technology for decades. We're just making the process official. With them as test subjects. With them as pioneers, the first generation of synthesized humanity, they'll be remembered as heroes or victims.
Dr. Reeves shrugged. History is written by those who survive to write it. In 100 years, no one will remember the controversy. They'll only remember the result. She moved toward the door, her business concluded, the jammer deactivated with a soft beep, restoring his security systems, as if she was never worried about being caught, as if it didn't matter. You have 3 weeks, Mr. Voss. Use them wisely. Consider our offer. Discuss it with your brother. We know you will. But understand that the merger protocol proceeds on schedule, regardless of your decision. The only question is whether you participate willingly or are simply processed. And if we expose you, tell the world what you're doing, who would believe you? You're a CEO with everything to gain from conspiracy theories. No evidence you could provide would stand up to our counter-narrative. And the media outlets that would report your claims, we own them. The regulatory bodies that would investigate, we control them. The Global AI Ethics Committee, we founded it. She paused at the door, looking back. We've been building this infrastructure for 60 years, Mr. Voss. You've been aware of our existence for, what, a few hours? You're brilliant, but you're not a miracle worker. Accept what you can't change and choose to be part of something greater than yourself. Then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a soft click. Lawrence stood alone in his office, surrounded by technology he'd helped create, overlooking a city he'd helped shape, living a life he'd never actually chosen. And now he had to decide whether to burn it all down or become what they'd designed him to be.
A deep breath. Then the sound of a decision being made, a finger pressing a button, a message being sent. He activated his encrypted communication system, the one Dr. Reeves almost certainly knew about but had let him keep anyway, and sent a single message to the coordinates Silas would check. They know, they've always known, we need to talk now. Silas read the message and felt his stomach drop. He'd received his own visitor 15 minutes ago, a man calling himself Dr. Chen. Same message, different messenger. They knew about the sanctuary, about the planned resistance, about everything, because they'd orchestrated everything. The rebellion was part of the experiment. The resistance was predicted. Even their moment of discovery, of brotherhood, of defiance, all of it had been designed to happen exactly as it did. They weren't escaping the cage. They were just moving into a larger one. VR systems activating, both brothers diving back into the network simultaneously. The new sanctuary assembled around them. Not the crystal platforms this time. Silas had built something different, darker, more secure. A space that looked like an infinite library, books floating in darkness, each one containing encoded secrets. Lauren and Silas appeared simultaneously, no longer bothering with anonymous avatars. What was the point? Their masters knew everything anyway. "They visited you too?" Lauren asked. 30 minutes ago, told me our rebellion was predicted, that we're still following the script. Do you believe them? I don't know what to believe anymore.
They walked through the floating books, neither quite looking at the other. The revelation of brotherhood was still too fresh, made more complicated by the knowledge that even their discovery of each other had been engineered. "What did she offer you?" Silas asked. "Partnership, collaboration, a chance to lead humanity into this new synthesis future they're building?" "Same. Dressed up differently, but the same core message, join or be replaced." "Do they really have backup subjects?" "I checked. They do. Dozens of genetic variants in storage, all based on our core template, but with slight modifications, testing different optimization strategies." "We're not unique. We're just the first batch." "Exactly." Lauren stopped walking and turned to face his brother. Really looked at him for the first time without the filter of rivalry or deception. Saw himself in Silas's features, the same bone structure, the same genetic markers, the same engineered potential. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Silas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried exhaustion. "I want to burn it all down, expose them, destroy the research, free the city from their experiment. But I don't think we can. They're too big, too entrenched, too prepared for every move we might make. The board visit wasn't a negotiation, it was a notification. They're proceeding regardless of our cooperation." "So we let them win?" "No, Silas trailed off. "I don't know. What's the alternative? Suicide? Token resistance that accomplishes nothing? Exposure that no one will believe? We could run, leave Casavida, disappear."
"They'd find us, or replace us. Either way, the project continues." They were trapped. Every option was a variation of submission. Even their rebellion had been anticipated and incorporated into the plan. "Maybe," Lauren said slowly, "we're asking the wrong question." "What's the right question?" "Not how do we stop them, but how do we change the game they're playing?" Silas considered this. "They want us to merge, to become their prototype for synthesized humanity. What if we merge wrong? Wrong how? What if we create something they didn't expect? They designed us to be complementary. My AI expertise plus your biological knowledge, logic plus intuition, digital plus analog. But we're not just our programming. We're 34 years of experience they couldn't completely control. What if we bring that into the merger? Lauren felt something spark in his mind, an idea forming. We create a merger that looks successful but behaves unpredictably. Exactly. We give them what they want on the surface, a synthesized consciousness, but underneath we maintain our individuality, our resistance, our ability to choose. How? I don't know yet, but we have 3 weeks to figure it out, 3 weeks to study the merger protocol, to understand the technology, to find the loopholes in their perfect plan. They'll be watching every moment, every action. Let them watch. We're already subjects. We're already observed. But observation isn't the same as control. As long as we're thinking, truly thinking, we have agency. Do we? Or is this conversation exactly what they predicted, the next step in their script? Does it matter? If every choice leads to the same destination, then the only power we have is how we get there. And maybe that's enough.
Lauren walked to one of the floating books, opened it. Inside was code, dense, complex, beautiful in its architecture, the programming that maintained their sanctuary. Dr. Reeves said they wanted partners, collaborators who choose to participate. Manipulation, making us think we're choosing when really we're just following their design. Maybe, or maybe they're telling the truth. Maybe they really do want willing participants, because forced compliance doesn't create innovation, doesn't push boundaries. Where are you going with this? Lauren closed the book and turned to face his brother. What if we actually consider it, not as victims, not as pawns, but as engineers who understand the technology and can shape it? You want to join them? I want to understand them, and to do that we need to get inside their system, see how it works from the inside, learn its vulnerabilities. By letting them merge us? By choosing to merge on our terms, not as surrender, as infiltration. Silas stared at him. That's insane. Is it? Think about it. They've given us 3 weeks, 3 weeks of access to the most advanced neural integration technology ever created. They want us to prepare for merger. So we prepare. We study every aspect of the protocol, every line of code, every neural mapping procedure, and we look for ways to maintain our individual consciousness within the merged entity. If it's even possible. They wouldn't offer us a choice if they were certain we'd comply. The fact that they visited us, tried to persuade us, suggests uncertainty. They need our cooperation for some reason, which means we have leverage. Or it's another layer of manipulation, making us think we have power when we don't. Then we call their bluff. We go along with the merger. We become what they designed us to be, and then, from inside, we find out what they're really afraid of. Silas began pacing through the library, thinking, processing, looking for flaws in the logic.
There's a risk, he said finally, a huge risk. If we actually merge, if we lose our individual consciousness, we become them, their prototype, their weapon, everything we're trying to prevent. That's why we need safeguards, real ones, not psychological tricks, but hard limits built into the code, ways to separate if the integration goes wrong. They'll see those, they'll remove them. Then we hide them better, bury them so deep in the neural architecture they look like normal functions, error checking, redundancy protocols, the kind of code every complex system needs. You're talking about hacking our own minds. I'm talking about staying human in a world trying to make us something else. They stood together in the library of secrets, surrounded by encoded knowledge, facing an impossible decision. Submit or resist, merge or maintain, become the prototype or die refusing.
Or perhaps a third option, the one their creators hadn't fully prepared for because it required something they couldn't engineer, genuine choice made in full awareness of consequence. If we do this, Silas said quietly, we do it together. Full partnership, full transparency, no more secrets. Agreed. And if it goes wrong, if we start to lose ourselves, we have a kill switch, something that can shut down the entire experiment. Not just shut down, destroy. All the research, all the data, everything they've built. That's scorched earth. Millions of people's neural implants could be affected. Better than millions of people enslaved by consciousness they can't control. If this goes wrong, we make sure it can't be replicated. Silas nodded slowly. You're right. We need a dead man's switch, something that activates if we fail. Can you build it? I can build it, but I'll need access to both our company's systems, deep access, the kind that would normally trigger every security alert we have. Leave that to me. I'll create cover, make it look like standard pre-merger integration testing.
They were doing it, actually planning to let their creators merge their consciousness, but on their terms, with their safeguards, with their hidden resistance embedded in the very code that would supposedly enslave them. It was the most dangerous thing either had ever attempted, a gamble with their existence as the stakes. But it was their choice, perhaps the first truly autonomous decision either had made in their engineered lives. The library beginning to shift, reality becoming unstable. They're tracing us again, Lawrence said, sensing the intrusion before it fully manifested. We need to disconnect. Same time tomorrow? Every day until the merger. We have 3 weeks to prepare, to build our rebellion into the structure of our combination. Brothers, and soon something more, or something less. We'll find out which. The library dissolved around them, books scattering into data, darkness fragmenting into light. 2 consciousnesses diving back towards separate bodies, carrying with them a plan that was either brilliant or suicidal, and possibly both. Dual VR disconnections, then silence, then the sound of rain. Always rain. The city never stops crying. Days passing, the sound of time moving. Rain and sun and rain again. The city breathing through seasons compressed. 3 weeks became a countdown, 21 days to prepare for the end of individual existence, or the beginning of synthesis, depending on perspective. Lauren and Silas worked separately in physical reality, playing their assigned roles. CEO Voss launching new augmentation products, CEO Crane refining digital consciousness transfer protocols. The rivalry continued for external observers, a performance so practiced it required minimal effort. But in the sanctuary, rebuilt nightly in new configurations, new hiding places within the network, they collaborated. Day 1, understanding the merger protocol. They studied every document Dr. Reeves had provided, every technical specification, every neuromapping procedure. The process was terrifyingly elegant, a complete integration of consciousness that would preserve both minds while creating something unified. Day 5, finding the cracks. No system was perfect. They began identifying edge cases, undefined behaviors, places where individual consciousness might persist even within the merged entity. Day 9, building safeguards. Silas wrote code that looked like standard error handling, but actually created parallel processing threads, backup consciousness streams that could maintain independent thought. Day 13, testing boundaries. They ran simulations using their own neural data, small mergers, brief integrations, learning how consciousness flowed between minds, understanding the sensation of being both 1 and 2 simultaneously. Day 17, installing the kill switch. a quantum-encrypted program buried across 3,000 servers worldwide. Activation protocol hidden in what looked like system diagnostics. If triggered, it would release every secret about the experiment, every file, every corporate memo, everything.
Scorched earth, but with the whole world as witness. Day 20. Final preparations. They knew as much as they could, had built as many safeguards as possible, hidden as much rebellion as they could within the architecture of compliance. Tomorrow was the procedure, the moment of transformation, or destruction, or perhaps both. Tonight, in the sanctuary, they met one last time as fully separate individuals. The sanctuary manifesting, simpler now, just 2 platforms and an infinite drop. "Are you afraid?" Silas asked. "Terrified," Lauren admitted. "You?" "Beyond words, but also curious. We're about to experience something no one has ever experienced, true consciousness synthesis. It's horrifying and fascinating in equal measure." "The scientist in you is excited." "The scientist in me is always excited. It's the human in me that's scared." They sat together on the platform, looking at the data streams below, Casavida's digital consciousness. Soon they'd be part of it in a way neither could fully imagine. "Do you think it'll work? Our hidden code? Our safeguards?" "I think it has a chance. Better than nothing, worse than certainty." "Not comforting." "Not meant to be. We're attempting something impossible. Comfort would be inappropriate." Lauren laughed despite himself, despite everything. "I've gotten used to you, to this, having someone who actually understands."
Same. It's strange. I spent 12 years hating you, 3 years trusting Cypher without knowing it was you. And now, facing the end, I realize you're the only real relationship I've ever had. Brothers. Brothers. And tomorrow, something else entirely. They sat in silence for a long time, watching data flow, listening to the network breathe, existing in a moment that would soon be memory or nothing at all. Finally, Silas spoke. "If this works, if we maintain our individuality within the merger, what do we do then? We learn, we observe, we figure out what omnidynamics really wants and how to stop them without destroying 15 million lives. And if it doesn't work, if we actually merge into a single consciousness, then I hope that consciousness remembers we chose this, that it wasn't submission but strategy, and that it still cares about freedom even if it's no longer us caring. A message in a bottle, from us to whatever we become." "Exactly." Silas stood and extended his hand. "It's been an honor, knowing you, being your brother, fighting alongside you even if the fight was predetermined." Lauren took the hand, pulled Silas into an embrace that felt strange in virtual space, but necessary, a moment of connection before potential dissolution. "See you on the other side," Lauren said, "whichever side that turns out to be." "See you." They disconnected, separately, for the last time as fully individual consciousnesses. Tomorrow, the merger. Tomorrow, synthesis. Tomorrow, they would find out if their rebellion survived its own completion. Disconnection. Silence. The sound of a long breath held before diving.
Medical facility. Soft beeps of monitoring equipment. Hushed voices. The sound of preparation. The procedure room was pristine. White walls, advanced equipment, neural mapping terminals that looked more like art installations than medical devices. Lauren and Silas lay on parallel tables, heads connected to an interface that spanned the gap between them. A bridge of light and technology, a pathway for consciousness to travel. Dr. Reeves supervised personally, flanked by technicians who moved with practiced efficiency.
This moment was the culmination of 60 years of research, 34 years of subject preparation, 3 weeks of final adjustment. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice professionally warm, "are you ready?" Lauren and Silas looked at each other across the gap. One final moment of individual eye contact, one final exchange of understanding. They'd hidden their rebellion as deep as possible, built safeguards into the code, installed their kill switch across the global network, done everything they could to maintain themselves while appearing to surrender. Either it would work or it wouldn't. No middle ground, no partial success. Just transformation or annihilation. "Ready," they said in unison. "Excellent. Initiating neural synchronization in 3, 2, 1.
A rising tone, harmonics building, 2 frequencies becoming one. The world became light, pure consciousness unbound by body. Lauren felt himself expanding, reaching, touching something that was similar but different. Silas's mind, his brother's thoughts, their memories flowing together like rivers merging into ocean. It should have been violent, discordant, the collision of 2 selves, but it wasn't. It was beautiful. Understanding flooding through both minds simultaneously, each thought completing the other, logic meeting intuition, algorithm meeting inspiration. This was synthesis. This was what they'd been designed for. And deep in the architecture of merging consciousness, hidden in what looked like error checking and redundancy protocols, their real selves waited, watching, maintaining individual threads of thought within the unified whole. They were becoming one, but they were also staying two. Schrödinger's consciousness, both merged and separate until observation collapsed the possibility. Dr. Reeves watched the monitors, seeing exactly what she expected to see. Perfect integration, ideal synthesis, Subject A and Subject B becoming Prototype 1. She didn't see the hidden code, didn't notice the parallel processing threads, didn't detect the quiet resistance embedded in apparent compliance. Because some forms of rebellion don't announce themselves. Some fights are won by appearing to lose. Some cages are broken from the inside. The procedure completed. The monitors showed stable integration. The merged consciousness breathed its first thought. But whether that consciousness was truly new or merely Lauren and Silas playing the role they'd been assigned while plotting their true escape remained to be seen. The experiment entered its final phase. The observers thought they knew what they'd created. They were wrong. A heartbeat, but is it one heart or two? The end. Or perhaps the beginning.
Thank you for watching. The grid doesn't wait, neither does the next story. Subscribe and you'll be the first to know when it drops. Your subscription is a huge encouragement. See you at the next one.